Today, I want to talk about big picture and not the immediate big picture. I get it that right now there's so much excitement wrapped up in just the now for the Chicago Bulls, right? We're hearing a lot of kind of interesting moves, smaller moves between Ben Mathurin, Jericho Sims, Peyton Watson, like players like that, Scoot Henderson, who we've talked a little bit about. And while those moves are looked at as kind of shorter term, safe moves that could turn into long term moves if the risk ends up hitting for the Chicago Bulls, on today's episode, I want to talk more so about should Bryson Graham be kind of more so safeguarding his assets? Because if we do see Caleb Wilson turn into a true number one option here over the next year or two, should the Bulls actually hold on to any assets instead of trading them for a bigger, more star level swing if needed? We're going to talk about that. We're going to dive into the mailbag, all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content for today, y'all. And I want to have a conversation from this point. As I said in the intro, should the Bulls be making these smaller kind of bunts, or should they be saving up assets for a major swing? Because if Matas, if Caleb end up turning into a number one, number two, could those assets be better used to get another star in here at a position of need, right? If let's just say you have it work out where Giddey, Matas, and Caleb turn into exactly what you need, right? You still have a hole at the two long term that I'm sure Bryson Graham is hoping that Dalen Swain is going to end up fitting. Your long-term center option is not on the roster yet, more than likely, right? And so should Bulls be kind of safeguarding those assets, right? So far, I think one of the things we can all kind of agree that Bryson Graham has done is guarantee flexibility, right? He's valued flexibility. That's part of the reason this 15th roster spot remains open. And despite it being in a lot of speculative kind of pieces on what the Bulls can do with it, the Bulls have really signaled nothing to show that they're trying to fill that 15th spot. They haven't brought anybody in for a workout. They haven't sat down with any veteran pieces that could take a veteran, a veteran minimum to come to this team. And we haven't even really heard anything about, either Sellers or anybody else filling that 15th spot, right? The Bulls are in a position of optionality. And I want to be clear, this is as much of an option as anything else. I'm not saying here one way is greater than the other, but I do want to talk about that mindset, right? Optionality is not the same thing as permission to spend recklessly. I think when you have your optionality, you want to kind of safeguard it. You want to maintain that for a while, right? And so there's been a lot of call about the Bulls moving for smaller assets, right? And that's perfectly fine. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. Bringing in Ben Mathurin, if you can get him reasonably and cheaply, bringing in Scoot Henderson for the upside swing, those aren't necessarily bad moves, right? But I will say this. Should the Bulls be looking to spend assets on an eighth man potentially or something like that on a problem that doesn't really exist right now? And I think the mindset is clear. And I understand why me and other Bulls fans have had that mindset in the sense that you have a spot, go out there and try to fill it. But everything doesn't need to be solved in 1 year. It doesn't have to, right? Chicago still doesn't exactly know what it's going to need next to Caleb, next to Matas, and next to Josh Giddey. If those three guys work out, it doesn't. And the reason why I say that is this. If Matas and Caleb Wilson end up turning into really good, consistent three-point shooters, you don't necessarily need a big-time scorer at the two guard. You may be able to get away with more of a Dyson Daniels type two guard, somebody who's an excellent defender, but maybe scores 8 to 10 points per game. If Matas and Caleb Wilson's three-point shooting does not turn out to be something you can bet on consistently, again, not saying that it won't, you need more of a knockdown shooter that still has the defense. So it kind of changes in what you need, right? And so I don't want the Bulls, or not say I don't want them, but it's a thought process to say, let's not look at a problem and try to solve a problem right now that may not be a long-term problem anyway, right? If Caleb Wilson truly does become the number one that Chicago Bulls need, if they do that, of course he's going to need a running mate. But that running mate could already be in the roster in Matas Buzelis. If Caleb Wilson ends up turning to more of a two, right? And no knock on that. No knock. If Caleb Wilson turns into a really good two on a championship team, you don't knock that. That's still, in many estimations, a Hall of Fame player, if you can be a number 2 on a consistently championship team, you're on pace for a Hall of Fame career in that case, right? If Matas Buzelis truly becomes that second star, then the Bulls don't need to chase after 2. They need to chase after a really good 3. If Josh Giddey becomes a really good 3, right, if he's the long-term option at point guard, you don't need to spend everything on another ball-dominant guard. You got to find somebody who can fit within that, right? So I think it's a big mistake that some teams run into when they spin before they know exactly what problem that they're solving. AK did that. Just reality, right? Spending big money on DeMar DeRozan was solving a problem that we didn't need yet, because you could have Lonzo wasn't the problem. Like, Lonzo, if you would have signed Lonzo for the money that you signed him for and been like, all right, bet we got a backcourt mate with Zach LaVine, that's there. You had already made a trade for Nikola Vucevic before you really got to see what he looked like with Zach LaVine, and then you end up bringing in DeMar, and it changed the way Nikola Vucevic had to play on top of Vuce hitting a decline, right? Caleb Wilson is going to determine maybe the entire rebuild, and that's just the reality of it. If Caleb Wilson hits this ceiling, that's a star-level ceiling, whether the Chicago buys a co-star or not, like, it matters to that. Because are you looking for another franchise player-level player, or you end up looking for somebody who's more of a complementary, right? The Caleb potential trajectory that we're going to see over this next 1 or 2 years is going to be there. If this guy looks like somebody who can score 20 points per game by year 3, right? The rim pressure, the two-way ability, the defense, all that stuff. If you do that, like, you do not want to trade for somebody who's going to take the ball away from him. And because Caleb Wilson's offensive game is the thing that people are looking at, that's still going to need polish and stuff like that, that's there. Find a shooter, find a co-star, those type of things, right? And Caleb can end up, like I said, being more of an elite 2. And if he is more of an elite 2, then you're going to need more of a primary option on the offensive side of the ball. And so before Bryson Graham trades first-round picks for a star, you need to know what you're having and what you're trying to find next to Caleb Wilson long term. The money part makes a sense as well. Matas is going to be part of that evaluation, right? The Matas leap is going to also change the type of a blockbuster trade that the Chicago Bulls are going to need, right? So, the Bulls, you don't necessarily need 3 superstars if Caleb and Matas turn into an actualized number 1 and number 2. Now, if Matas turns into more of a number 3 option and Caleb is the number 1 option, then you need to find somebody before that, right? The question isn't just about can Caleb and Matas average 20. It's not that simple. We're going to have a voicemail from Old Man Vaughn. I'm just going to call him because this is my brother, Old Man Vaughn, in regards to it. But I do think, like, as you see these guys grow offensively, defensively, it's going to matter that. And then Josh Giddey decides the position that you're going to need. Even if Matas and Caleb Wilson work out, right? If for some reason, and I'm not saying that it won't, Josh Giddey stands, calm down, put the pistols away. I'm not saying that Giddey won't turn into that number 3, but let's say that he doesn't work out with Caleb and Matas. Then you may need to find a point guard dominant scorer rather than a shooting guard dominant scorer, and that's great. But if Josh Giddey's shooting holds, then you have your long-term organizer, and you need to find a more complementary piece to go between him and your forwards and Caleb and Matas. That's it, right? So I think that's part of it. And then another part, you have to find out which young Bulls players on this team are real players or assets. And that's the reality of it. Again, I don't mean this to sound disrespectful to anybody, but hey, Rob Dillingham, Dalen Swain, Noah Esgay, Leonard Miller, right? Those 4 players specifically. Are those guys assets? Are they non-NBA players? Or are they actualized players that fill into what you need, right? You don't need all 4 of those guys to hit. If you do, we need it. We deserve it, right? But if those guys hit, if 2 of those guys hit, if 3 of those guys hit, it drastically changes as well, because what if they turn into that complementary player that you need next to those guys, right? Like, there's a question there, right? If 2 of those guys become real consistent NBA players, then the Bulls can focus, again, more assets at the top, because you have your role players, they're going to fill into that. And that's why the internal development for this Bulls team is so important. That's why I love hearing that this Bulls team has went out and, prioritized development between Tiago and the Jordan Brink hiring and all those type of things, keeping Wes Unseld here on this roster, right? All that matters, because that is what you're going to be your development part of it, right? And then I think another part of this that you're asking too is that, do the Nic Claxton, Caleb Wilson front court work? Now, I'm not counting it out, because Nic Claxton is still a potentially young player, right? Like, he is somebody that at the end of this deal, you can see Nic Claxton signing another 3-year deal with the Chicago Bulls and staying here. If it works out, he gets back to what he does. I still think you need to start using that time to find a center of the future. But even if Nic Claxton and Caleb Wilson work as a front court for the Bulls, that tells you the style of center that you're fine. You don't need a center that can really stretch the floor which, is again, what so many people look at as bigs. You don't need to have that as a big, right? So there's that part of it. And also, if the defense that Nic Claxton and Caleb Wilson bring is so transformative to how the Bulls play basketball, then there's there. Also, before you put in assets, let this team prove to you that they're 1 star away. Right now, we don't know that. So even trying to put in assets on a player that could become a star, things like that, we don't know that we're 1 star away. We could be 2. We don't know, right? And so, again, it could be so detrimental to a rebuild if you push in on your assets way too early, right? You don't need a 50-win season before you make a major move. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that the Bulls need to become this 65-win team before we make any moves. Not saying that at all. But you have to make sure that your foundation makes sense. You have to make sure that if this young core gets Chicago Bulls to league average or God forbid, slightly above league average, that changes what you need to do with your assets in regards to that. But I do want to talk about, like I say this to say this, right? This is a list of players that over the last 3 to 6 months have rumored that they could become available. Not saying that they will become available, that they could become available. And the Bulls could be setting themselves up to take advantage of that if some of these situations break down with their teams over the next year or two. One, we've already talked about Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, right? That if this pairing does not kind of get over that hump, there's a chance that the Orlando Magic could break that up. Now, I think that both these guys don't necessarily have the biggest fit unless one of Matas or Caleb Wilson doesn't work out for this Bulls team. So there you have it in that one. But that is the kind of some of the players that are mentioned that could become available over the next year or two, right? Donovan Mitchell, he could leave the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think he'd be an aging scoring guard at that point. But the defense isn't there, but that's another guy, right? I do think that Donovan fits scoring-wise, but the defense, the size, all that type of stuff, I don't know, right? Like, you would have to trust that Matas, Nic Claxton, Caleb Wilson, your bench defense is really damn good, because then Donovan Mitchell could be a scoring fit next to Josh Giddey. The defensive fit is a question, but if you have so much frontline defense, right, in your front court and the rotation is ability there, then cool, you can see that, right? Talked about Franz. I do think that, I think Franz is a really good player, but I do think that you're hoping that even if you look at Franz's second year and Matas' second year, they're very similar, and they're very similar style players too. I don't think you really need to look at that, right? Devin Booker is another player that, has been mentioned, like maybe the Suns go rebuild. I personally think the Phoenix Suns have shown nothing but a commitment long-term to Devin Booker. I don't see them moving off of Devin Booker anytime soon, right? But I do think that Devin offers the type of, clean offensive role that you want to see for this team. And look, Devin Booker has also showed himself to be somebody who is willing to engage defensively if the team defense is there. If Phoenix does eventually pivot, should Chicago have them on their whiteboard? Have him on their whiteboard? Maybe, right? I do think he takes the difficult shots. He would fit in the go-to scorer. He creates in the half court, which the Bulls do lack. He can fit in the backcourt with Josh Giddey. You're not giving up a super big amount of size either. Devin Booker could be the archetype of the type of scorer that you need with Caleb Wilson, with Matas Buzelis potentially. But then I wanted to look at the more cautionary examples. And these are the players that I think that absolutely kind of fit the Bulls rebuild a little bit more. If Evan Mobley becomes available, which is some rumor in regards to that, with the Cavs, I think they'd be stupid to trade Evan Mobley. That's my personal opinion. I think Evan Mobley is so good defensively. When you look at the metrics on how he switches, how good of a rim protector he is, not necessarily shot blocker, but good in rebounding as well, I think that Evan Mobley becomes a very fascinating fit as his contract could wind down with the Cleveland Cavaliers that the Bulls could look at, right? A Caleb Wilson, Evan Mobley front court is so much balance offensively and defensively that I think it could be absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And that is the type of player that I'd be continually keeping on the whiteboard, so to say, and always looking at like, hey, are the Cavs, have we heard anything that the Cavs could be looking to move Evan Mobley? Are the Cavs not interested in Evan Mobley? Those type of things. I think that's what I keep an eye out on. Again, long term. Evan Mobley has 4 years left on his contract. You're probably looking at 2, maybe 3 years if the Cavs experiment fails before they maybe look to move that. But then again, it's something that I could be interested in. This would only come with, if the Cavs look at the situation, let's say Donovan Mitchell does leave, right, or ask out, which he has 5 years left on his deal, and they just look at this thing and say, hey, this ain't working here, then maybe they look to blow up the team completely, but it's a long shot. Very, very big long shot. May not happen at all. And then you have the guys that people mention like the Zion Williamson, right? Is Zion Williamson the type of maybe upside swing that you want to take? I don't think there's a positional fit anymore if Matas and Caleb are on this team. Maybe don't worry about fit. You just try to figure it out. But that's it. And then you have the other guys, right? The difference-making moves that aren't the move, but they are moves that the Bulls can make. The Scoot Hendersons, right? Moves that people have mentioned. The Michael Porter Jr. moves that people have mentioned, something like that, right? Jordan Hawkins, the Peyton Watsons, the Ben Matherns. Those are kind of the more so the not that they aren't franchise altering moves, but they could help solidify your direction, right? I think overall, this is what you look at. Before Bryson Graham makes a blockbuster move, he has to look at these things. One, do we know that Caleb Wilson is absolutely a cornerstone of this franchise? And I know why some Bulls fans are going to say, why are we even asking that? We just drafted him. Again, everything doesn't work out. Is Matas more of a 2, or is he number 3? Or is he just a solid starter? Is Josh Giddey have you committed to Josh Giddey being your long-term answer at point guard? And then do Caleb Wilson and Matas Buzelis up your ceiling? And then also, does Dalen Swain, Noah Essengay, Leonard Miller, do those guys show that they are Dillingham, show that they belong on a winning NBA team? That's what you can look at, right? You don't want to spend too recklessly. You don't want to spend too early. You don't want to put your chips in too soon, because as long as you do that, that's what you but at the same time, I'll say this. Don't let flexibility become fear of making a move. And that's what AK kind of did in a little bit of way. So don't allow that either, but also don't push your chips in too early, because that can become detrimental in your rebuild in a large margin, in a large way. But let me know what you guys think on that down below. Like, I do think that patience is smart until it becomes looked at as passive. And so you have to mark that line between being aggressive too early and having too much patience. And we'll see what Bryson Graham ends up doing with that one. But let me know what you guys think on that part down below. With that said, let's go ahead and get into these voicemails that we have for today. We got 4 voicemails that we're going to get into. My brother Corn is back with a voicemail as well, which is crazy enough. But this first one that we have, this one's from Sean.
What up, Haize? Sean calling. Was listening to the schedule release pod and got to the part where you were talking about how people feel about March basketball. And I know for some odd reason people don't take March basketball too seriously. I kind of do. Not as of lately, because we haven't really been anything, right? But a lot of teams are making playoff pushes in March for seeding. So I understand, as a Bulls fan, you looking at it and you saying, hey, March basketball means nothing. But in my opinion, some of those teams are making playoff pushes for seeding. I understand that if you got the East locked up and things like that, you may be resting players here and there. So you have an argument there, right? I guess that's your argument there. But correct me if I'm wrong, I think March basketball has some meaning to it. Even if we're not a play-in team, March basketball, it's still basketball. It is still regular season basketball. It's not like it tailed off and those games don't matter for your record. They still mean something to me. But that's just me. That's my rant. That's my tangent. C-Red, I hope this season goes as good as I have it in my mind. Peace.
Every single point that you made here, I completely agree with. Completely agree with it. I think that it's the lazy take that some people have when they're just like, oh, it's March basketball. The good teams aren't trying. That's not true, because playoff positioning matters. I do think in this season as well, how close the Eastern Conference is projected to be, that positioning is going to matter a lot this season. So I think that March basketball is basketball. Like you said, you laid it out pretty perfectly in that. March basketball is still basketball. Now, are there some teams that are sitting their players because they got everything locked up? Yeah, that may not be the case this year, and that's a season-by-season basis. I think people that just go in with just this thing of, well, March basketball doesn't matter, those wins don't matter, that's also short-sighted, right? You got to look at each situation as what it means to that team and in that matchup and where that team is headed and what they're trying to accomplish, and we'll see. So we'll see with the Bulls. The stretch that we have in March this year could definitely be beneficial to the Chicago Bulls and whatever they're trying to end their season with. We'll see. All right, let's get into this next one, man. This one's from Mr. Head.
Hey, Haize. It's Mr. Headley, long-time listener, first-time calling. Been a fan since Jordan was in a White Sox jersey. Stuck with the team all through it. You might recognize me from the comment section. I've got an idea. And I feel like I thought about it a few weeks ago, but I read about it as well, so it's maybe a topic that you might address to. But I think bringing DeMar back to essentially run our bench and be our 15th roster spot, but essentially the main scoring punch off of our bench, surrounded by great defense with Trey Jones and either Okoro or if Swain can, be that at least defensive dog, he could do that with Leonard Miller and Jalen Smith as the center. I think we could actually have a bench mob again. And I think we could surprise people. And I think maybe, whatever we can offer him with the exception that we have, like, I don't know, maybe like $9 million a year, which I guess is more than the minimum that he could take with a contender, do it as a 3-year contract and have it be like maybe something kind of unique that's kind of respectful to him, like the second year is a player option in case he just wants to ball out this year and get a bigger payday, and then the third year could be a team option. So it allows us to still have flexibility. And I think he could give that Mamba mentality to Caleb. I think he could teach a lot of guys how to, improve their mid-range game. And I think, just practicing against him, players like Noah and other defenders that we want to develop, they're going to become better defenders practicing against his pump fakes. So I feel it's like almost like a secret kind of win-win situation that if everything hits right and we don't really have any injuries, we could have a bench that surprises people and a starting five that just makes sense together and grows and develops and surprise a lot of people. I don't know, Haize. What do you think? Peace.
No, I'm good on bringing DeMar back. Like I understand the reasoning. What you laid out here is well thought out. You made some very solid points, so I'm not here attacking your points because I think you and objectively you made some really good points on how DeMar coming off the bench can actually. We still need some scoring off the bench. He could be that. Maybe he can even be a mentor for Dalen Swain. He could potentially be that. So I'm objectively seeing that. But to me, it's about fit, right? I think that what we have on our bench right now is that it's similar to what we're going to have in the starting lineup, and that's that everything gets spread out. DeMar has to play a certain way. Almost everything has to be through him. He has to dribble the air out the ball. He has to be ball dominant. And that's just who DeMar is as a player. No, that's just the reality of who he is as a player at this point. Well, who's been basically his whole career. So I think DeMar is better suited to do those things for a contender than coming to the Chicago Bulls team. But, hey, we'll see what happens. But, again, I don't think the Bulls are really looking to fill that 15 spot. And even if they do, I think they're going more young upside swing than a veteran like DeMar DeRozan personally. Again, I could be completely wrong on that. All right, let's get into this next one. This one's from Old Man Vaughn.
What's good, Haize? This is Unc Vaughn. I'd like to get straight into it, but I got to check you. I got to call you out on something, brother. I know you were probably being facetious, but I never said that we need to trade Matas if he's not an all-star after year 3. Only thing I said was that we need to quit assuming that when his contract is up, he's just going to get paid by the Bulls. I hope so. I mean, you want your homegrown talent to work, but again, like Bryson Graham, this is evaluation mode. Everybody's in evaluation mode right now. So that's all I said. Secondly, man, about the topic of ESPN and 2032 about being contenders, I mean, that's some bullshit. Like, that's so random. How do you know? I mean, you don't know what's going to happen over the next year or two, anything. I mean, they could make a trade. Caleb Wilson could become, a star/superstar. So I don't know. They just pulled that out of their ass at, 2032. But in any case, I kind of want to piggyback off of what you were saying. In order for the Bulls and this particular core to truly be like an elite team in the East and contend, or let's say a top 6 to 8 team in the NBA, both Matas and Caleb Wilson will need to be 20-plus point per game scorers. One of them will probably need to average 25 because Powell's a stopgap. We don't know what the 2 is going to bring in the future. We don't know what's going to happen with the center in the future. We know, and right now for the current, we know Claxton's not a scorer. And here's the thing about Giddey. I love his numbers. I love his stats. I love his size. I love how he can initiate the break, but he's not the greatest guard in half court, meaning he's not a shot creator. When you look at the guards that lead teams to, deep in the playoffs or even to championship victories, they're shot creators. Shot creators in the half court. It could be Brunson. It could be Shai Gilgeous. Team point guards that have taken their team really far. You know what I'm saying? Chris Paul, Dame Lillard, Steph Curry. So this ain't the Magic Stockton era anymore where those type of guards are necessarily taking teams to championships. So again, knowing that about Giddey, 30 points is a headliner for him. Those other guards I named, throw in D Rose, that's another night at the office. So I say all this to say that Matas and Wilson will have to be big time scorers for this current iteration of this core to make us contenders. See red, y'all.
I had to mess with you. I'm always going to mess with you. You're like, because if you guys listen to Chicago Bears Central, they'll know that I mess with Darius. You become like the Darius here. I'm always going to poke fun at you. But I do agree. Saying till 2032 is just wild. It's just a wild statement. And it doesn't make sense. And we've seen that if you're smart as you rebuild, it doesn't take that long. So you got to see, right? Now, I don't think that either saying that Caleb and Matas have to average a certain point per game total either, because it's about two-way basketball. Because if Caleb is only averaging 18, 19 points, but he's an elite defensive player, that's probably better than a 25 point per game score. So I'm not willing to put that on it, right? Because you got to see how they develop, how that core develops. If they're really, really amazing defensively, then you don't need them to score that much offensively, right? So it's just about how things develop, and that's one thing that we don't know yet. And that's part of the fun of this journey, is getting to see how these things develop for these players. All right, let's get into this last voicemail, man. This one's from Corn.
What's the word, King Drip? It's your brother Corn, man. Let's get right into it, man. Like I never left the bitch, man. You already know your brother always busy working these 2 9-to-5s, man. Trying to keep my head above water. But let's get right into it, because I still always stay tuned to all of your episodes. So let's talk about this latest episode I just got through tuning into, and that is the so-called 3 weeks of hell. And it looks like it's gonna be 3 weeks of fucking hell. But I think it's truly going to be a test for our young ones, man. Pressure make diamonds, or they burst pipes. So we're gonna see what they're made of. We're going to see. And one thing is that I'm going to like, after they get through this 3 weeks of hell, they're going to be battle tested, regardless of, and that's what I'm going to ask. What do y'all think the record is going to be? Comment down below for all y'all. Drip, what do y'all think our record will be, win or losses, in that 3 weeks? If you ain't already thought of it, or whoever, ain't already thought about it, let me know what you think. I'm gonna do my research and double back on that. Yeah, man, I'm ready for it, and I can't wait for it, man. Like I said, 3 weeks of hell is gonna be a true test for our young guns, and I will be all ready for it. But I did want to talk about one more thing. And it's very important. I've been seeing it a little bit. It's not as bad, not spreadable yet, but I just want to nip it in the butt right now. What we're not going to do, Bulls fans, and this is an announcement to all Bulls fans, we're not going to create this fucking wedge between Caleb Wilson and Matas Buzelis. We are not the Boston Celtic fucking fans. We are not Celtic fans. We would not do the same thing the Celtic fans did to Jason Tatum. And you already know. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. We're going to not have Team Matas and Team Caleb. It's okay to have 2 alphas on one team. You know, we're not going to segregate.
Very tough stretch of the season for the Bulls. But like you said, it can make diamonds or burst pipes. And we're going to see which it does for this Bulls team next season. But I tell you what, I'm excited about the journey. Very excited to get through that journey and see what it means for this Bulls team. But as far as the Caleb versus Matas thing, I agree with you 100%. I've already seen it be done to a little degree. I don't think it's been like huge or anything that's like that you look and you're just like, y'all stupid. But it is starting to it could get to that point. And Let these guys grow together. Let these young warriors who actually care about, both these guys care about basketball. They care about being great. They care about improving each and every day. Let those guys go out there and do that and get it, and have somebody that they see next to them that has that same mentality and pushes each other to be hungry in that. Let that be the case. And then let's hope that we get to reap the benefits as Bulls fans. But that's going to do it for today's episode, y'all, man. Make sure you guys are like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode or an upload. You can follow us at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.